The humans arrived quietly. No alarms, no grand announcements, no fleets bristling with weapons. Their ships were small, almost fragile-looking, and their design seemed simple compared to the massive, gleaming warships of the alien civilizations. Yet, despite their apparent weakness, the humans carried an air of confidence, a quiet presence that made the vast halls of the Galactic Council feel suddenly smaller, almost tense. Every delegate in the chamber noticed it. Every species, proud of their strength and ancient power, felt it too. When the humans walked into the council chambers, they did not bow. They did not speak with formal titles. Instead, they moved with curiosity, looking around, touching consoles, examining strange devices, and even smiling at things that seemed ordinary to the council members. One human laughed softly when a hologram flickered and distorted. It was not a laugh of mockery, it was gentle, almost playful. But the council felt it, a sting they did not understand. It was as if the humans were silently saying, "You take yourselves too seriously," the council whispered among themselves. "Pathetic creatures," said a Zorbian delegate, his 3 eyes narrowing. "Look at them. They cannot even carry a personal shield without stumbling." Another, a Rivalian, snorted. "They will never survive a single skirmish against the Krail fleets. Their bones are too weak, their minds too small." The words were meant to humiliate, but the humans only smiled. Not at them exactly, more like at the idea that someone could ever doubt their potential. One human stepped forward, a woman with dark hair pulled into a simple braid. She spoke in the Galactic common tongue, her voice calm but carrying a tone of certainty. "Do you really think strength alone defines a species?" she asked. Her eyes scanned the room, meeting each delegate's gaze. There was no fear, no submission. There was only quiet confidence. The council felt a ripple of unease. Strength alone. Yes, they relied on fleets, weapons, and numbers. Yet this human, small and unarmed, challenged that idea with a single question. The humans left that day without another word. No treaties, no threats, no clever speeches. They simply walked out, leaving behind the faint echo of laughter and a presence that lingered longer than any weapon or declaration could. The delegates stared after them. Some were angry, some confused, and some afraid. How could a species so seemingly fragile evoke such a feeling without striking a blow? In the days that followed, the council debated endlessly. "They are children," one elder said. "We will crush them if necessary." Another voice, quieter but firm, countered. "They are not children. There is something in them we do not understand." The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Outside the council chambers, the humans moved through the galaxy, as if exploring their own backyard. Ships that appeared weak and ordinary carried humans who laughed while charting new stars, who spoke to local species in kindness and curiosity, and who observed alien worlds with fascination. Wherever they went, subtle changes followed. Plants grew faster. Small conflicts ended before they began. Weather patterns shifted slightly, enough to nourish barren lands. No one noticed immediately, but the pattern was clear. The humans were small in appearance, but in effect they were everywhere, touching the galaxy in ways others could not even see. The council continued to mock them, convinced that any creature without fleets of warships or armies of trained soldiers was meaningless. Yet each day the humans remained silent, watching, learning, and sometimes smiling at the aliens' arrogance. And with every smile, every quiet action, the humans made a mark that would grow into something far larger than the council could imagine. They left quietly, yes, but the seeds of change had been planted, and soon the galaxy would realize that underestimating humans was not just a mistake. It was a danger. Weeks passed and the humans did not speak. They did not demand tribute or attention. They simply moved quietly, exploring the edges of the galaxy, visiting worlds that had been abandoned, observing civilizations that believed themselves untouchable. At first, the council dismissed them. Small creatures, fragile, nothing but curiosity, they said. But slowly an unsettling pattern emerged. Trade ships that had once been vulnerable to piracy returned safely when humans were near. Colonies facing environmental collapse thrived after a human ship passed through. Star systems thought lost to cosmic storms found recovery seemingly overnight. And everywhere humans appeared, subtle changes followed. Trees grew taller, rivers widened, and alien communities found solutions to problems that had lasted generations. No one could explain it. No one knew how or why. The council began to argue among themselves. "They are lucky," said a Terran delegate. Luck cannot be measured as power, hissed a Grawl. They cannot possibly be the cause. Something else must be happening. Yet, deep down, some delegates could feel it. The humans were doing something extraordinary, something beyond understanding. Mira, the human woman who had spoken at the council before, was often seen leading small teams across distant planets. She moved with patience, talking to locals, adjusting machinery, observing natural systems, and sometimes kneeling to plant seeds in dry soil. One day, she was seen placing tiny devices into the ground of a barren planet. A storm formed over that land a few days later, watering the dry earth, forming rivers that glimmered under the sun. The delegates who observed it laughed nervously. Children playing with weather machines, they said. Yet none could explain how something so small could affect something so large so quickly. The humans were silent, but the galaxy began to notice them. Ships, planets, and civilizations seemed to respond to their presence. Conflicts ended without human armies. Trade routes reopened, even where pirates once ruled. The council, watching from their halls, realized they could not predict what humans would do next. The humans did not follow plans. They did not fight with conventional rules. They acted freely, guided by intelligence, curiosity, and a deep understanding of life itself. Some council members began to fear. Not the human strength, they had no weapons, no fleets. But their mind, their patience, their creativity, it was terrifying in its simplicity. They are everywhere, whispered one elder during a secret meeting. And they are always one step ahead, even when they appear to do nothing. Yet the humans did not act with malice. They were observers, helpers, innovators, and every subtle intervention left a ripple that changed the galaxy. Species that had ignored one another now cooperated, if only cautiously, trying to understand the humans' intentions. Trade increased, conflicts lessened, and the council's influence began to feel smaller, less certain. The Zorbian delegate, once loud and proud, admitted quietly, "I thought them weak. I see now I was wrong. They are something else entirely." A Revalian delegate added, "They mock our pride without words. They are teaching us, yet we do not even understand the lesson. Humans never explained. They never demanded thanks. They simply moved on, leaving worlds brighter, safer, and more alive than before. And each time they left the council with the same feeling, unease. A small seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing. In their quiet movements, the humans were teaching the galaxy a truth the council had long ignored. That power is not always seen in fleets or weapons, and that intelligence, patience, and curiosity can achieve what brute force cannot. And as the humans drifted silently from one star to another, the galaxy began to wonder, when these quiet observers acted, were they truly helping? Or were they preparing the galaxy for a lesson that would be remembered forever? Years passed, and the humans' quiet presence began to stir both awe and fear across the galaxy. Some civilizations had grown impatient. They saw the humans as a threat, not because of their strength, but because of the way they changed everything they touched. The largest coalition of alien nations, proud and arrogant, decided to act. They would strike first, crushing what they called a weak, meddling species before it grew too powerful. A massive fleet gathered near the outer rim, weapons bristling, engines humming with deadly energy. Planets trembled under the weight of the approaching ships. This would be the humans' first real test, the moment when their true nature would be revealed. The council watched from their chambers, some smug, others uneasy. They believed the humans would finally break, but the humans did not panic. They did not hide. Mira stood on the bridge of her ship, calm and focused. Her crew moved quietly, each member working with precision, their faces showing no fear. When the coalition fleet arrived, the humans did not attack. They simply approached, their small ships glinting like stars in the dark void of space. The coalition laughed. "One tiny vessel against thousands?" sneered a Terran commander. "Pathetic. Prepare to destroy them." But as the first volleys of energy were fired, the humans' ship did something no one expected. The beams bent, twisted, and dissipated into nothing. Sensors failed, engines froze, shields shimmered unpredictably, and within moments, the largest battleships in the coalition were drifting helplessly in space. Not a single human had fired a weapon. Not a single human had raised a hand in anger. Yet without killing, without fighting, they had won. The coalition fleet surrendered, their pride shattered, their fear growing like a shadow over them. The humans simply turned and left, continuing their exploration as if nothing had happened. Back in the Council's sea, Hambers, the delegates were in shock. How is this possible? A Revalian cried, her voice trembling. They had no weapons, no fleet, and yet they defeated thousands without firing a shot. A wiser delegate, older and quieter, spoke. They are not weak. They are clever, patient, and unpredictable. They understand the universe in ways we cannot, and that is far more dangerous than any weapon. The humans' victory was not just a demonstration of intelligence, it was a lesson. It was a reminder that strength was not measured by numbers, firepower, or intimidation. Strength could be subtle, quiet, and unseen. It could be patience, creativity, and thinking beyond the obvious, and the humans had all of these qualities in abundance. In the aftermath, the galaxy began to change. Leaders who had once dismissed humans as insignificant reconsidered their strategies. Alliances formed where none had existed before. Even the Council, proud and ancient, felt smaller, less certain, less capable than before. They had underestimated a species that seemed fragile, and the consequences were undeniable. Mira and her crew moved on to another corner of the galaxy. They repaired a failing colony, helped species in need, and quietly observed the Coalition's attempts to recover. Every action was calm, deliberate, and without malice. Yet the Coalition's leaders could not stop thinking about them. How could such fragile creatures wield such power without violence? How could a species so small change the galaxy with only their minds? The lesson was clear. Even if the Council and the Coalition refused to admit it, humans did not need to fight to win. They did not need weapons to dominate. They needed only ingenuity, patience, and the courage to act differently when everyone else followed the same rules. And as the humans drifted silently through the stars, leaving chaos where arrogance had ruled, the galaxy began to whisper a single word: fear. Not of war, but of a species that could change everything simply by thinking, acting, and refusing to be what others expected. The first clash had ended. But for the Council, the first real battle with humanity, one of mind, spirit, and resilience, had just begun. After the first clash, the Galactic Council could not stop thinking about the humans. They had mocked them once, laughed at their small ships, their fragile bodies, their curious ways. But the humans had shown them something the Council had never imagined, that weakness could hide strength, that patience could defeat power, and that a mind free of fear could conquer even the largest fleets. Inside the Council chambers, voices rose and fell like storm waves. "They mock us," shouted a Revalian delegate, her scales bristling with anger. "They laugh at our fleets, our weapons, our proud history. They are children playing with forces they cannot even imagine." A Terran delegate leaned forward, frowning. "No, they do not mock us. They show us our arrogance, our pride, and our mistakes, and we cannot undo what we have ignored for centuries." His words hung in the air. Some delegates looked uncomfortable. They had never admitted error, not before, yet the humans had forced them to see it, and seeing it hurt. The humans, meanwhile, moved quietly through the galaxy. They did not demand attention, yet wherever they went, small changes rippled outward. A world in civil war would find peace. A starving colony would have crops that flourished overnight. Conflicts that had lasted generations would quietly dissolve, and the creatures who had fought one another would shake hands, unaware of who had truly guided them. Humans were everywhere, yet nowhere, influencing without announcing, teaching without speaking. The Council attempted diplomacy. Envoys were sent with gifts, with threats, with elaborate treaties. They hoped to lure the humans into negotiation, into a visible display of submission. But the humans' response was always the same: a calm, knowing smile, a question that no one could answer, and then silence. They left the room before anyone could grasp their intentions, leaving delegates to argue and debate over meaning. Some began to realize that the humans' actions were not random. Every act, every subtle intervention was deliberate. Humans had a strategy the Council could not see, a long game they had not yet revealed. And with every small victory, with every lesson delivered quietly, the humans undermined the pride of every species in the galaxy. The Zorbian delegate, once proud and loud, admitted quietly to a small group, "We thought them weak." We laughed. And now, I see it. They do not fight like us. They do not follow our rules. They are unpredictable, and that is far more dangerous than our fleets. Mira, walking among the stars with her team, could sense the change. The galaxy was tense. Empires that once ignored one another now watched closely, trying to anticipate her movements. And she did not hide her satisfaction, not because she wanted revenge, but because the arrogance of others had blinded them to the truth. Humans were clever, patient, and fearless. They were everywhere the galaxy needed them to be. The council grew desperate. They debated strategies to trap or challenge the humans, but every plan failed, often without their noticing. Ships would malfunction unexpectedly, alliances would collapse, and entire operations would crumble under circumstances that seemed impossible. Every failure reinforced one fact: humans did not need to fight to win. And yet, even in their mockery, even in the chaos they inspired, humans acted with a quiet morality. They helped without expectation, corrected mistakes without judgment, and taught lessons without cruelty. They were a mirror the council could not look into, showing flaws too deep to ignore, but offering hope for those willing to learn. The humans left the council shaken, the galaxy uneasy, and the stars themselves seeming to whisper a warning. Pride alone was not enough. Strength was not always measured by weapons. And when a species like humanity chose to intervene, silently and cleverly, the consequences would be felt across the galaxy. The council realized finally that the humans were not their enemies. They were something far more challenging. They were a mirror, a teacher, and a force that could reshape the galaxy without ever raising a hand in violence. And in that realization lay the council's deepest fear. They had underestimated a species that would not be mocked again. Years had passed since the humans first arrived, and the Galactic Council was no longer laughing. Every attempt to control or challenge humanity had failed. The humans had proven time and again that they did not fight like anyone else, that their power was not in fleets or weapons, but in intelligence, patience, and cunning that no alien species could predict. The Council's pride had been wounded, and now they faced consequences they could not undo. The galaxy was changing. Worlds that had once fallen into chaos now thrived because humans had quietly intervened. Pirates who had ruled trade routes found their plans disrupted. Planets facing famine and war had grown prosperous again. Entire civilizations were learning cooperation, innovation, and resilience without ever knowing who had guided them. And always humans moved silently, without recognition, without reward, without a word of explanation. Then came the day the Council realized the full scale of what they had done. A star system, home to one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy, experienced a disaster unlike anything seen before. Their warships malfunctioned in formation. Energy fields collapsed. Strategic communication systems failed. The fleet was rendered useless not by attack, but by the subtle, invisible influence of humans who had touched the system weeks before. Panic swept through the council chambers. "This cannot be," shouted a Revalian delegate. "Our fleets are masters of war. Our systems are invincible. How could a small, fragile species cause such chaos?" A Terran delegate, pale with worry, spoke quietly. "It is not chaos. It is precision. They act without violence, without fear, and they expose our weaknesses. They teach through consequence, and we were arrogant enough to laugh at them." The humans did not appear in response to the Council's fear. They did not announce themselves. They had no armies gathering, no ships bristling with weapons. Instead, they moved quietly from world to world, repairing, observing, and occasionally guiding events in ways only they understood. Mira walked among her team, her eyes scanning a distant planet's surface, adjusting a failing energy grid with subtle precision. In hours, the planet, once dark and dying, shone with life again. Crops flourished, water returned to dry rivers, and communities that had been fractured came together in celebration. The Council's pride could not withstand such quiet power. They had laughed at humans for being small, unarmed, and fragile. They had assumed intelligence alone was not enough. And now, every failure, every disaster they could not prevent, every plan that collapsed under invisible hands reminded them of their mistake. Humans had not mocked openly. They had acted silently, teaching lessons the galaxy could not ignore. Some delegates began to understand, finally, the humans' true strength. It was not in destruction, domination, or fear. It was in foresight, creativity, and patience. It was in their ability to see patterns that others could not, to predict consequences before anyone else acted. It was a power born not of anger but of understanding, and it left the Council powerless to oppose them. And so the humans continued their quiet work. reshaping the galaxy in ways that were both subtle and profound. Alliances shifted, conflicts ended, and hope grew in places that had long known only despair. The Council could only watch, humbled as a species they had dismissed became the unseen force guiding the galaxy toward a better future. Mira, looking at the stars, smiled faintly. The humans had proven something that could never be erased, that power was not always loud, that strength was not always physical, and that intelligence guided by patience and morality could change worlds without ever firing a shot. The turning point had come. The galaxy would never be the same, and the Council finally would understand that underestimating humanity had been their greatest mistake. The humans returned to the Council's capital quietly, as they always did, without warning, without fanfare. Their ships glinted under the twin suns, sleek and small compared to the massive fleets of the Council, yet their presence carried a weight that no weapon could match. The Council, humbled and wary, gathered in their chambers, unsure of what to expect. For decades they had mocked humanity, laughed at their fragile appearance and quiet curiosity. Now they could only wait, hearts heavy with uncertainty. Mira stepped forward, calm but commanding, her eyes scanning the Council delegates. Her expression was not cruel, but it carried a quiet authority that made even the proudest species pause. "You mocked what you did not understand," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber. "You judged strength without seeing endurance, arrogance without seeing wisdom, and power without seeing creativity. And now, the galaxy suffers because of your choices." A Revalian delegate's scales shivered, a mixture of shame and fear crossing her face. We did not know," she stammered. "We thought we were strong. We thought intelligence alone could not compete with power." Mira shook her head. "You underestimated humanity. You assumed weakness meant insignificance. But strength is more than weapons. Intelligence, patience, creativity, and courage. These are the tools that can change worlds. You mocked us, and now you face the consequences of your pride." The Council bowed their heads, humbled. They remembered the fleets that had failed, the colonies that had prospered in secret, the conflicts that had ended without a single human soldier fighting. Every subtle intervention, every invisible hand guiding the galaxy toward stability, now felt like a lesson they had ignored for too long. "But we can still choose differently," Mira continued, her eyes softening. "You can learn. You can adapt. You can rise above arrogance and pride. Or history will judge you harshly, as it judges all who cling to fear and dominance rather than understanding and wisdom." The chamber was silent. The delegates could feel the truth in her words, and with it the weight of regret. They had tried to control, to dominate, to dismiss a species they thought fragile. They had mocked, laughed, and belittled humanity. And now they understood that the humans' quiet power was something they could never match with fleets or weapons alone. Mira's words were not a threat. They were a mirror. The humans were showing the Council what true strength could be, not domination, not fear, not destruction, but the courage to act differently, to think differently, to guide with patience and intelligence. Some delegates whispered among themselves. "We can follow their example," one said. "We can learn from them if we are willing to set aside pride." Others nodded, the weight of understanding settling over them like a tide. The humans had forced the Council to see their own flaws, and in doing so had offered a chance to change. And then, without another word, Mira and the humans left. Their ships glided silently out of the capital, disappearing into the stars as they always had. The Council remained behind, humbled, reflective, and transformed. The lesson was clear. Humanity was not an enemy, but a teacher. They had mocked silently, acted boldly, and reminded the galaxy that arrogance and pride were far more dangerous than any weapon. As the humans disappeared into the cosmos, the delegates knew one thing for certain. The galaxy had been changed forever, not by fleets, not by wars, but by the quiet, unstoppable spirit of humanity. And the memory of their arrival, their calm power, and their unwavering intelligence would haunt the Council and guide them forever. The humans had spoken, and the Council had finally listened. The reckoning was complete, not with violence, but with understanding. And in that quiet victory, humanity's true strength was revealed. They did not conquer the galaxy. They taught it. Centuries passed, and the humans became more legend than reality. Yet their presence remained in every corner of the galaxy. Civilizations that had once mocked them now whispered their name with respect. The humans, they said. The small ones who changed everything without weapons, without armies, without violence. They are the measure of true strength. Planets once barren now flourished. Civilizations that had been fractured by pride or war found unity and prosperity. The humans had touched these worlds quietly, subtly, leaving behind guidance, insight, and solutions to problems no one else could solve. And always they moved onward, never claiming glory, never seeking tribute, never asking for recognition. The council, older now and deeply humbled, had transformed as well. They had learned what the humans had shown them, that strength is not always force, that courage is not always boldness, and that intelligence, creativity, and morality can move worlds in ways no fleet ever could. The lessons of patience, strategy, and foresight had reshaped their decisions, their alliances, and even their hearts. Mira, walking among her crew on a distant planet, looked at the horizon. The twin suns glimmered. The wind carried the scent of flowers blooming where none had grown for decades, and the water shimmered in clean, flowing rivers. She smiled quietly. The galaxy was alive with potential, and humans had played their part without dominance, without fear, without pride. Their work was not finished, they never sought to finish, but their influence would endure far longer than any warship or fleet ever could. Even in the darkest corners of space, humans left traces of their presence. A device to restore failing ecosystems here. A gentle intervention to settle conflicts there. Every small act rippled outward, connecting species, nurturing life, and quietly teaching civilizations the value of intelligence guided by conscience. The council often recalled the first human arrival. How they had laughed softly in their chambers. How they had walked freely through alien halls, touching consoles, observing quietly. They remembered the first clash with the coalition fleet, when the humans had defeated thousands of ships without a single attack. They remembered the subtle mockery, the quiet lessons, the patience that had reshaped entire worlds. And above all, they remembered the reckoning, when humanity had shown them, without violence, what true power could be. Now, the galaxy told the story in whispers, in tales passed from planet to planet, in legends and songs. Children learned of the humans not as warriors, but as teachers, guides, and examples of what a species could achieve with mind, heart, and patience. The humans had left without a word, yet their impact was everywhere, undeniable, eternal. And somewhere in the silent reaches of the cosmos, the humans continued their journey. They explored, they learned, they observed, they created. They laughed at stars and marveled at life. They never sought recognition, never demanded tribute, never asked for thanks. They simply existed, quietly shaping a galaxy that had once mocked them, teaching it that greatness comes not from pride or fear, but from courage, intelligence, and unshakable spirit. The council had finally understood. Humans were not to be underestimated, not to be controlled, not to be feared in the usual sense. They were the mirror of the galaxy itself, clever, resilient, patient, and full of life. The lesson of humanity, subtle, unstoppable, enduring, would echo through time. And as Mira's ship vanished into the stars, leaving planets to flourish, civilizations to thrive, and the council to reflect on their mistakes, the galaxy understood one truth forever. Humans did not conquer. Humans taught. And in that teaching, the galaxy became better, stronger, and wiser than it had ever been. The humans had left without a word, but their legacy would never be forgotten.